So I have preached some rather personal messages over the last few weeks, and it has stirred something in many of you. I've had lots of conversation over the last few weeks over what I've talked about, and particularly as it regards to anxiety. I shared with you a couple of weeks ago my struggles with anxiety. It's something I deal with every single day. Some days are better than others, but that touched a chord with a lot of you, and I appreciate that, hearing your feedback and hearing from you. But I preached a message a few weeks ago, and I had somebody ask me a question after it, and man, this question has lingered with me. The person asked me, "What do you fear?" And that's a rather existential question, what do you fear? It's also a deeply personal question, but it's something I want to pose to you this morning, and I want you to ruminate on that. What do you fear? Now, it may take some time to fully compile that list. I get it. But we've been in this sermon series this last few weeks on fear and anxiety called No Longer Slaves. In the last couple of weeks, we've specifically talked about anxiety. Today, I want to shift our focus and talk about fear. Now, personally, as I've done some reflection on that question, I don't fear as much the unknown. I know for a lot of us, that's where we get stuck, is the unknown, and it can kind of cripple us at times. But it's true to some extent for me. I don't necessarily like change. I like my routines and getting in my routines. It's how I deal with my anxiety. But the thing that I fear the most is repeating painful patterns. Now, that may sound like an oxymoron coming from somebody who likes to get into a routine and to maintain that routine, but I don't like painful ones. You know, maybe you've discovered this too, but we can get through anything once, right? Your resilience to adversity is way greater than you realize it is. Personally, I've lost just about everything me and my family owned to a natural disaster. I've navigated death. I've lost relationships. I've had many really uncomfortable conversations. I've had to confront my own inner demons. I have been called bad names and have been chewed out as your pastor, and more so here than any other church I've been at. I have been on the receiving end of some people's really bad days. I've been lied about, and I've been lied to, and I've been stolen from. I've been all the things. But it's not just my experience, that's probably many of your experiences as well. But here's the truth of it all. You and I have survived those experiences. In fact, you and I have survived 100% of our worst days. So I'm not fearful of going through painful situations. I've been through plenty of them. I'm fearful of repeating them. Because once I've lived through something that's hard and painful, like if I see the writing on the wall that I'm going to relive it again, that's when I become crippled by fear. That's when I become terrified because I don't want to re-experience the things I've already survived from. I didn't enjoy them the first time, and I'd rather not duplicate them the second or the third time. You and I have survived 100% of our worst days, yet we need God to intervene so that we can survive them again. Because we're going to have bad days ahead too. Now, the Israelites knew something about bad days. All throughout the Old Testament, the Israelites, they went through this cycle where they were faithful to God in the covenantal relationship that they had entered into. And when they were faithful to God, God protected them, God blessed them, God rewarded them. But they were always tempted to turn their attention elsewhere. They had neighbors who worshiped other gods, and those other gods were appealing to them. And so they would flirt with and then all out cheat on God, the God of the Bible, with these other deities. And when they did that, they broke this covenantal relationship, and God removed his protection from them. And every single time people came in and they attacked them, they destroyed them, they carted them off into exile. Like, it didn't go well for the Israelites when they weren't faithful to God. And then after they were experiencing the consequences of those actions, they would repent of their sin and God would restore them again. And this happened over and over and over again. And while they didn't display fear of their consequences while they were sinning, they certainly feared their consequences when they experienced them. But in the midst of this pattern, the prophet Isaiah gets a word from God and he relays it to the people. Here's what Isaiah writes, chapter 41, verse 10. He says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." So where is the command in there? It's do not fear, right? Why? Because they're afraid. Of what? Of it happening to them again. The painful situation that they had experienced before, it's back. And while they survived it the previous times, there's always the lingering question of, am I going to survive it this time? You know, for some of you, it may be a pattern in your marriage that you are afraid of. Or maybe it's an addiction or a substance abuse problem that keeps rearing its ugly head within your family. Or maybe it's a reoccurring situation in a job. Or maybe it's the overarching political climate that we're in that you're afraid of. You know, I know you saw the election results from Tuesday, but did you pay attention to the election results in Fort Bend County? 49% of Fort Bend County voted blue, 47% of the county voted red, leaving 4% of the county voting for people that I'd never heard of before. But that means, statistically speaking, that 49% of your neighbors and many people in our church woke up this week sad, disappointed, or maybe even fearful. And 47%, which are many of our neighbors and many people in our church, need to understand that. We live in the most diverse county in the country, and our church has grown to look more diverse over the years. So my hope and prayer is that you would be cognizant of the people you are around. But here, God says, do not fear in the midst of the pattern, because he promises to be with you in the midst of the situation, whether it's the first time or the second time, the third time, or the fourth time, or the fifth time. Maybe you are years into this pattern that you are dealing with, this repeated same situation, but in the midst of it, God says, do not be dismayed, for I am your God. The things you turn to for help, they may be sinking sand, but I am still your rescuer. Yet knowing God is there is not simply helpful. You know, if you told anybody who's in the midst of trouble, hey, God's with you, that's not fixing the situation. In the same way, James, the brother of Jesus, he asks this rhetorical question in the same vein. He says this: suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? You know, just telling somebody, it's gonna be okay, doesn't make it okay. And you know, in the same way, God doesn't just announce his presence and that's the end of the story. God doesn't come in and go, hey, I'm here, so you don't have to be afraid. No, it's the next part of the verse that we need to cling to. He says this: I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. God says, I will be your strength when your strength fails. I will hold you tight when you stumble and fall. You don't got this. I got this. Man, if I had a nickel for every time somebody told me that God is not going to give them more than they can handle, I'd have a lot of nickels. But friends, that's not a biblical understanding. Yes, you will be in over your head at times. Yes, you will deal with things that you cannot handle in and of yourself. That's why you need God, because if you could do it by yourself, you wouldn't need him at all. But in the midst of it, he promises to be with us when things happen, when we face those fearful situations. And that's the blessing, because he promises to handle what you can't handle. It's not that you won't have fear-inducing situations. You're going to have fear-inducing situations. It's the fact that he will be present to reduce your fear and to do something about it. And God doesn't stop there either. A few verses later, Isaiah writes this. He says, "For I am the Lord your God who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you." It's as if God is saying, I know you've been through painful things in the past. I know you're scared. I know it's hard. But I'm not letting go of you as we walk through this thing together. In fact, David, in the book of Psalms, he talks about this very same thing. He says, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Friends, your marriage may be in the valley. Your addiction may leave you feeling like you are stuck in a pit. Your job may feel like you're marching off to your death 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Yet God's promise is that he will be there with you in the midst of it all. He's more than just your comfort buddy. He's the one who sustains you through it. But I've said this before, and I will say it again. David in Psalm 23, he writes about God being a good shepherd. And a good shepherd protects his sheep. A good shepherd guides his sheep. A good shepherd cares for his sheep. In fact, David says, the Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And you're reading that, and this is a God who takes care of you and gives you peace and rest and provides for your needs. And then you're like, hold up, wait a minute. If God is my shepherd, he provides for my needs, he gives me rest, he blesses me, he leads me along good paths, and then I'm now in the midst of this dark valley. How did I get here? In fact, if God was the one guiding me, why am I in this place where I am fearful right now? I've had many of you who have looked at my face and have asked me that question. Why is God letting me go through such a painful situation? And I don't know. Yet, if God is the guide, then he knows to get you from point A to point B takes getting off the mountain and going through the valley. And when you arrive at point B, you look back on your journey and realize this was the only path that would get me to where I am right now. So I've got an 8-year-old, Ava Grace, who is scared of a lot of things. And we've had this conversation many times over the last few years. As she becomes so afraid of what we're doing or what we're going through that she kind of wants to shut down. And I tell her, baby, sometimes the only way to get through the situation is to go through the situation. And I'll tell her, just hold my hand, squeeze it really tight. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to walk through this thing together. We had to take her to the eye doctor last year. We thought she needed glasses, and We're sitting there for the eye exam, and Amy's in the chair first getting her eyes checked out, and Ava's sitting in my lap, and I've got my arms wrapped around her, and I feel her heart just pounding under her chest. I said, Daddy, I don't feel good. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I said, it's okay. I'm scared. I know it's okay. Just grab my hand, hold it tight. It's going to be okay. I'm not leaving you. But to get through this, we got to get through it together because you have to have this eye exam. And it turns out she did need glasses. And it's one of those things you kind of got to get through. I promised to be there with her through it. But this time last year, we were at Disney World, and she finally hit the height to ride the rock and roller coaster. And it's one that we have talked about for a while. She watches all these behind-the-scenes Disney videos, and so she knows everything about the ride. And so I convinced her, let's go on this ride together. Now, if you've never been on the rock and roller coaster shoots you from 0 to 57 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds in the dark with Aerosmith blasting in the room. And it's not one upside down loop, it's 2 upside down loops. And she was brave. She wanted to get on the ride. I'm like, great, let's do it. Father-daughter moment. So we're standing in line for the ride, and about halfway through the wait of getting onto the ride, the fear overtook her. Daddy, I don't know if I can do this. I don't feel good. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, we are too invested in time into this ride to back off of it. And so I'm doing all the things. You can hold my hand, you can squeeze it real tight. I'm not going away. We're going to do this together, all the things. And then we get into right where they're loading people in, and she hears the blood-curdling screams of all of these people who are being jetted off at 57 miles an hour, and she's done at this point. And so I remembered something I had done to her the first day we were there. Now, I don't like riding roller coasters with my glasses on. I'm afraid I'm going to lose them. So I took them off. And you all just disappeared. I can't see anything without my glasses on. And I put them in my pocket. I said, baby, Daddy has to take his glasses off, but now I can't see. And I need you to help me get on the ride. And she grabbed my hand. Instead of squeezing my hand, she guided me through the rest of the way through the line. She got me seated in the roller coaster. She pulled down my harness for me, made sure that everything was right in there. Because here's the thing. It took her needing to help me to find her courage over her fear. Now, we got sent off at 57 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds. We did not 1 loop, but 2 loops with Aerosmith blasting in the room. And her screams went from screams to laughter as she looks over at me and goes, Daddy, can we ride this again? I said, let's get through this one first. In all seriousness, some of you are going through hell right now. And you don't know why it is you're going through what you're going through. And you don't understand how a good shepherd of a God could let you be in a situation that causes so much fear. And I don't have all the answers. Wish I did. But I do know that sometimes, oftentimes, most times, we don't arrive at the breakthroughs in our life because everything was just going swell. Like, we don't become more like Jesus on the good days. God often allows us to go through the valley because it's through the trials and tribulations that he uses as the catalyst for change. And so sometimes, oftentimes, most times, God lets you go through the valley because that is the journey he needed you to go on to arrive at your destination. And I know when you got that pain in the pit of your stomach, tears are filling your eyes, you got more questions that you have answers to, the world is crashing in, none of it makes sense, and you are afraid. And why wouldn't you be afraid? Because fear is a response to a threat or a perceived threat, right? But when you let God take your hand, he's going to eventually lead you to the other side. It may be the other side of the situation that you are in this life, or it may be the other side of this life. But he will eventually get you through what you are facing. So let me tell you this. When you encounter that fearful situation, I want you to look around you and ask the question, where is God? Because God is often in the form of a person he sends to intervene into your life, a song that you hear, certainly his word. Sometimes it's through that unmistakable, random thing that takes place that just has the fingerprints of God all over it. But hold tight to him when you find him in the midst of the valley. It won't last forever. David, the psalmist, he says this, weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. Friends, we need to hold on to that. Amen.